Well, here at 12 News, we are gearing up for a very big week with Flight 5342 traveling to Washington, D.C. to go and, it's a lot of things that we're navigating here. The 1-year anniversary of this crash, which is just reflecting on this past year, is such a big thing. And then all of the activities taking place this week, Dylan. I mean, there's a lot to look forward to here.
Yeah, so of course we'll be getting there at the beginning of the week, but on Tuesday, January 27th, which will be 2 days before the 1-year anniversary of that plane crash, the NTSB will be voting on their probable cause of the crash. Of course, throughout this year, they've mentioned a couple things, a couple findings that they've had. The helicopter being too high, the helicopter flying without their location technology known as ADS-B, but officially Tuesday they will be voting on their probable cause of the crash. They'll also be recommending some of those safety measures that we've seen before from them, but they really want to enhance and expand on those safety measures to really prevent a tragedy like this from ever happening again.
Yeah, and when thinking about that, initially I think a lot of us think of, oh, these 67 people who passed away, but it really does impact all of us if you do travel. And so the implications of it is so much greater than that.
And the 67 people who passed away, their families have been really the loudest voices in all of this. We have seen those families with an unimaginable loss, and we have talked to some of them, and you can see how devastating it is, but you can see they don't just want to sit there and grieve about this. They want to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody. Of course, the American Airlines flight from Wichita to Wichita to DC is a fairly new flight,
right?
With the Eisenhower Airport, but it's a flight that a lot of us Kansans take when we go to DC or we travel. Of course, we will be on that same flight back and forth as well. That is a busy airspace, and the DC airspace has been known to be busy. And that's one thing that the families have talked about more is we need to limit the amount of air traffic out there. It could be one of the recommendations that the NTSB does give, but the families' voices have been among the loudest, and they should be. They've been the advocates for it, and we expect to hear from them. They will be in DC this week for the 1-year anniversary of the crash, of course, continuing to say that as well and send that message that we need to make skies safer.
Yeah, it's a true privilege, I feel like, for us to be able to go out there and to speak to the investigators. And we were fortunate, I feel like, this past year. I feel like the NTSB has been really transparent about things. We've had a good relationship with lawmakers, too, who've helped kind of guide us to making sure that we're treating everything right with the coverage that we've had here and leading us to this moment.
Well, this is not a Democrat or Republican sided thing.
Not at
this
all.
Is a bipartisan. It doesn't even need to be bipartisan. We can all agree that what happened on January 29, 2025 should never happen again. And it should not have happened at all that night.
Right.
We have seen, and the NTSB has made it very clear, there were mistakes made not only that night, but there were warning signs that were ignored for years and years. You talk about the sheer amount of close encounters between military aircraft and planes that were landing in that airport or taking off from that airport. It's happened so many times. They were almost saying that this crash was inevitable. It wasn't if it was going to happen, it was when it was going to happen. And unfortunately, it happened January 29th. And so us being out there, we have talked about being here and covering this story for the last year, speak to those families. You hear about the runaway, you hear about the Potomac River, you hear about where the crash happened. We're going to be seeing that really for the first time in person. There's going to be a lot of emotion with that.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, the families that have that emotion, the investigators that have worked this case have the emotion. We're going to be able to see that in person. So we really hope to capture that emotion, that feeling, while we're there as well.
I think it kind of elevates your storytelling too when you're experiencing it, when you're face to face with some people. And I feel like, Dylan, you've really led our team with how we've told the story this past year. What does it mean to you to finally get this trip? Because we had kind of been advocating it from the beginning. We would like to eventually go to Washington to talk to lawmakers, to talk to the investigators, but we're getting this opportunity. It's meaning to you. What is that?
It's a privilege. Wichita and Washington, D.C. will now have a connection that no one would have wanted, but forever we will have a connection with them. And so for us to, share that side of the story and bridge our viewers from Kansas who maybe never been to Washington, D.C., who, again, see the maps that we show, hear the stories, but they don't see it. We will be able to take them with us along this journey. That's what it's going to mean to us. I mean, throughout this time covering it, there's so many people that said, I remember that person on the plane, even if you knew them directly. And of course, almost half the members on the plane on Flight 5342 were with the figure skating community. A lot of people went to the U.S. Championships that were held in Wichita just a week before that crash. They saw those skaters, they saw those coaches, and so they feel that connection. That's what it means, is to keep telling those stories. Those stories are never going to fade away. Yeah. Those stories will live forever with those victims' families. And we wish we could talk hours on each individual victim for that crash. And so we really just hope that we can, put as much of it together as possible to honor all of those people. But again, we are investigators to investigate why this happened and to make sure that federal agencies, lawmakers are doing what they can do to make sure this never happens again.
Yeah, there's so many layers to what we're going to be doing in DC. It's going to be a very busy week for us. So in addition to the coverage that we'll have in our newscast throughout the day this week, we're working on a couple of other projects in addition. So the week after, we're hoping to put together this special to kind of wrap around everything that we gathered in Washington, kind of reflecting a little bit more on the material days after, just giving us more time to absorb what we gather, because it will be a very busy time while we're in Washington. There are things that we have planned for the week, but I'm very anxious for those unanticipated moments. Maybe we will get a chance to speak to someone within the NTSB, someone special, maybe hearing more from the families. The families, I feel like they've been very gracious about speaking to us, but certainly we haven't heard from everyone. And if they want to share their story or to chime in on something, we would love to give them that opportunity. So those are just things that we'll just have to see. And I think that's going to be powerful, even if we don't get those things, to be there and to witness all of this and to share from that vantage point. Just what a gift, storytelling wise, to be able to have that. Down the road, we're hoping to do even a bigger project with a documentary. So there's just a lot of things that we're hoping to help with sharing this story, and again, reflecting on the material as we get more time to absorb it. And it's like we've said, a real privilege.
Well, it's such an important case. And again, you and I do this for a living. And so we talk to people every day in our jobs. We talk to different people, but there are certain stories that stick with you in a career. And this is definitely one of them. And meeting the victims' families along the way, and meeting the investigators who have been very open and honest about everything, but connecting with the lawmakers as well, connecting to some of those federal agencies, really has tied everything together for us. And when you think about Wichita, Kansas, of course we're the air capital of the world, but we have had some devastating moments in our city's history. The Wichita State football team and their plane crash, that is a story that still lives on decades later. And the memorials each year, we anticipate that being the very case for this crash as well. And so when you're talking about the specials that we plan on doing and those conversations we want to have, we want to be able to look back 20 years from now at not only our career, but for everyone else that's interested in this case, 20 years from now, being able to look back and say, wow, that's what happened. And that's what the conversations were had. That's what people were saying and feeling in the months and the weeks and of course this year after the crash. We want that to still be there, right? Whether it's for these victims' families who maybe can find a sense of comfort knowing just how much their child or their husband or wife or their family member was loved and cared about in their community. We want to keep sharing those stories. So it's a memento for all the people that have been involved in this. Yeah, so we appreciate everybody for watching our coverage. Again, watch our newscast. And if you haven't seen a lot of our coverage throughout this past year, we have a special section on our website dedicated to Flight 5342. And we're going to encompass all of these other elements that we're gathering while we're in DC there. And we hope you get a chance to go and check that out.